Comet Claudina. In the evening before the fateful night of January 12th, 2007, the Taylors were having dinner with some of the other guests in the terrace restaurant of Gulf Views. The electric lights embedded in pebble glass columns were superfluous. The early darkness of the winter evening was dispelled by Comet Argeius, popularly known as Comet Claudina. Comets are named after the individuals who discover them, and this fragment from the formation of our galaxy had been discovered 2 years earlier, in 2005, by the amateur Mexican astronomer Claudina Argeius. Comets are flying ice, pulled and thrown by the sun's gravity. Traveling in an elongated elliptical orbit, they loop around the sun and rebound into distant space, just as a ball thrown on the ground bounces back into the air. The comet's surface is frozen far more solidly than anything on Earth. In distant space, a comet is only an invisible ice ball. It becomes what the ancient Greeks called a long-haired star when it enters the inner solar system and is caught in the solar wind, a radioactive gas which pours forth from the sun at the speed of several hundred kilometers per second and at a temperature of 1 million degrees. As extreme heat melts the surface of the ice, it releases glowing gases, bits of rock, and cosmic dust, which are embedded in the ice and trail the comet in a stream of vibrating white light. For some unknown reason, possibly because of some unidentified compound in the ice, Claudina's flowing hair had the color of fire. It also had a unique orbit which brought it closer to Earth than any other comet in recorded history. It became visible to the naked eye during the evening in the summer. The vibrating flow of light in the sky, which makes comets so thrilling to watch, appeared at first as small as the flame of a matchstick, but it had grown bigger and brighter every night, and by 12:01:07 it was a flaming torch brightening the sky of the northern hemisphere. This out-of-this-world spectacle, the like of which none of the guests had ever seen or expected to see again, was the main topic of conversation. It had been in the news items for weeks and was talked about everywhere. Academic researchers have established that there was no reference to a fire or orange-colored long-haired star anywhere, not even on the inner walls of the pyramids, or in folk epics predating the written word. This meant that Comet Claudina's previous appearance in our skies must have been before the beginning of recorded history, possibly hundreds of thousands of years earlier. One columnist commented that Claudina last flew across our skies when people were still monkeys. Claudina was 125 kilometers in diameter, over 100 times larger than most comets, and large comets hover near the further reaches of the sun's gravitational reach, which is roughly 1 million light-years in every direction. The comings and goings of comets can give us a sense of our place in time. Nearby comets swarming between the orbits of Neptune and Pluto may pass within sighting distance twice in 100 years. Those farther away may take much longer to reappear. Kohoutek's comet, which acquired naked-eye visibility in 1973, is due back in about 72,000 years. 72,000 years makes you think. The last ice age was only 40,000 years ago, a long enough stretch of time for Arctic bears to change their brown fur to white and wipe out almost all traces of the human race. What is our future, then? Can our endangered species survive for 72,000 years longer? What is the lifespan of humanity? Who will be around in 72,000 years to watch a long-haired star streak across our sky? Until the appearance of Claudina, the brightest comet on record was the daylight comet of 1910, which is due to pass the Earth again in 4 million years. The flaming torch in the sky affected everybody. They all felt that they had something important to say, except James Taylor, who sat beside his wife as if he wasn't there. A rich dentist from New York, who clearly had the luxury of time to read and think, quoted the Astronomer Royal, Sir Martin Ryle. "Everything is comprehensible about the universe except its size." Anita Mayberry, Luke's tall, intense mother, wearing a bindi on her forehead and a blue silk sari, leaned forward to rouse the ex-executive from his gloomy silence. She used her standard conversational gambit. "James," she asked, fixing her demanding eyes on him, "if you could live your life all over again, what would you do differently?" "Everything," he burst out. "Everything." The couples around the table, all middle-aged or worse, laughed appreciatively. They knew the feeling. Leslie squeezed her husband's hand to let him know that she knew what he meant. She didn't understand either. She thought he meant the child. He meant everything. "James, if you would do everything differently," Anita Mayberry persisted, "do you mean you wouldn't marry Leslie?" "Jim had nothing to do with our marriage. That was me," Leslie cut in with protective haste. Her remark set off another ripple of laughter. They could laugh all the more easily because they were in no danger. Space centers around the world had confirmed that Comet Claudina would pass nearer to Earth than any other known comets, but still at a safe distance. The conversation reverted to space, to comets and planets. There are over 2 billion suns just in our galaxy, and a new planet is discovered every other week. So wasn't it possible that there were other life-supporting planets like our own circling one of those suns? While the rest of the company exchanged their guesses, Jim Taylor sank back into himself. He had been watching Comet Claudina from his office window in London, when he still had an office, wishing that there was another Earth they could go to, but he was no longer interested. He had resolved to leave the universe during the night. Tossing and turning in bed, he tried to imagine what it would be like to drown. He worried about the pain. Could he stand it? How long would it take? 5 minutes? More? When would he stop feeling anything? Would he be conscious when the water filled his lungs? Tossing and turning, Jim twisted so violently that the whole bed shook, and he got scared that he had wakened his wife. He froze and listened. She turned around and said a few indistinct words in an urgent voice, talking to someone in her dream. He waited for a while, until her breathing signaled that she was fast asleep again. He remembered tossing and turning in bed when he was a child. "I can't sleep," he would shout, and his mother would run upstairs to stroke his back, or they would read together. Little Jack Horner sat in a corner. Little Miss Muffet sat on a tuffet. The chief defect of Henry King was chewing little bits of string. It came to him then, a moment of absolute bliss. He saw his mother's cheerful round face and her loving brown eyes. He felt her smooth olive skin, her soft tickling hair as she leaned over to kiss him. And how good her thin, crispy Hungarian pancakes tasted. They melted in his mouth. He stood beside her at the stove and ate them as fast as she could make them. The plate she put them on was always empty. Tossing and turning, he was amazed that he could remember the long-forgotten address of their first home back in Toronto, 38 Sandford Avenue. He hadn't thought of the place for years, and now he had a vivid image of the 3-story brick house with its wooden porch. What fun he had, running up and down the stairs from the basement to the attic, and then down to the basement again, up and down, his heart filled with triumphant joy, until he fell so hard that he screamed his heart out against the pane. The deep cut on his forehead required 4 stitches, and his mother dressed the wound every day, soothing him with kisses and hugs. Tossing and turning, he wondered how old he was when he believed he could walk on water. 4, 5? His name was still Jim Clearmaker, and he didn't worry then about the agony of drowning. They lived next to a family from the Dominican Republic who had a boy called Jesus. Jesus could kick a ball with perfect aim. He never once missed the cat. He used to come over to their house to play and eat. Jim's mother was fond of the boy, but she liked her son better. "You're more like Jesus than that little devil," she said, picking Jim up and hugging him with a passion. Of all the Bible stories his mother had told him, Jim liked best the one about Jesus Christ walking on the lake and calming the waves. It was just the kind of thing he would have loved to do. He asked his Dominican friend to go for a run with him on Lake Ontario. I mean, your name being Jesus and everything. "Did Jesus walk on water?" asked Jesus. "Oh, yeah, I heard about that. Nah, I don't want to get my shoes wet." Jim decided to do it on his own. Why not, if he was more like Jesus than his friend? One Sunday afternoon the family went for a walk along the lake shore. His parents had him in the middle, holding his hands, but when a sudden squall whipped up the water, he broke free and ran toward the lake, flinging his arms wide. "Be quiet! Be quiet!" he shouted at the wind and the waves. He strained himself so hard to force the elements to listen that he grew dizzy and fell. His father raised him and shook him violently to bring him to his senses. "What was that all about? What? You wanted to calm the lake? You wanted to walk on water?" His father, who hated anything fanciful, hit him so hard that his head rang. His mother wasn't quick enough to ward off the blow, but she kicked his father on the shin. She always gave Jim heart. Stroking the scar on his forehead, the ex-executive was happy for a while, thinking of his childhood. But then he remembered the rest of his life.